Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, we're doing part 7 to the story that just seems to keep on going, titled, I Dissed My Bride on Our Honeymoon After I Saw Her Cheating. 5 months later, she's back and she's pregnant. And guys, that story, as you all recall, the guy got married to a gal he knew for a long time, or thought he knew her for a long time. She was close to the family, close with his sister, best friends with his sister. They went off on the honeymoon, and lo and behold, one day he caught her getting romantic with another girl. And left her there, came back to the States, and it's been a whole SHIT show. She got pregnant, and she's back, wanting a second chance. And it's been drama after drama after drama. And, of course, finding out that his sister is a big cheater, too. Shocker, they're best friends. And that girl from the island they went on the honeymoon is back, and the girl's about to give birth. All these types of crazy things. Or actually, she did give birth in the last story here. So we're continuing on in this guy's adventures here. And anything beyond that you want to know, go watch the whole series and catch up, and you can come back here. So, by the way, he actually wrote that to me, to the other channel, but since this is a wacko story, that'd be more appropriate over here, and he knows that. So it continues on. He says here, hello SSM. I want to thank you again for writing my story on the They Do What channel. The comments of you in the community have been incredibly helpful to me, my dad, Alex, and we can't say enough about the support that you guys have given us. We're making our way through the hell of our wives' infidelity and your guidance. Well, bro, take it one day at a time. Before updating, I'd like to address one thing that continues to be of concern in the comment section. I had a second DNA test done. I sent my DNA test for analysis myself. There is no way my wife or sister or mother could tamper with the second test. It confirms that I am my son's father. Yeah, a lot of guys were very much questioning that. We left off in the last update with my wife Jill living at my mother's with my son and my half-sister with fraternal twin Amy. Amy is married to Alex and is the mother of his son. Alex's son will be a year old in March. Amy is also pregnant with a daughter due in June. That daughter is a result of Amy's fun time on the beach in Guadalupe. Jane, Jill's lover from Guadalupe, is also at my mother's house. Jerry. My father was living with my Uncle Jake, but is now in his own place. Alex is back in his house, and I'm at my house. Alex, Amy, Jill, and I are all 24 years old. My father, my Uncle Jake, and Alex and I meet every Sunday to support each other in our divorces. My father is divorcing my mother. Alex is divorcing my sister Amy, and I'm divorcing Jill. All three for infidelity. All three divorces are in process. So, do you all use the same lawyer? I can't remember. Why not? Maybe get a group discount. Although with a lawyer, probably not. Then Amy and Jane had their fist fight at my mother's. We were concerned that my newborn son and Alex's son are in an environment that's so unstable and unsafe. We have decided just to take our kids to live with us. The advice from you and most people who commented about this was to talk to our attorney first before grabbing the kids. Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. I'm not going to give advice on this particular subject matter. I'm not holding myself liable for anything you do. But I will always say consult the wisdom and experience of your attorney. Here's what the attorney told us. In both cases, Alex and mine, there is no custody agreement in place. In both cases, our wives' attorney won't engage with our attorney in any discussion about custody. Right now, our wives have custody. Our attorney has petitioned the court for a custody hearing. He is asking for shared custody for both of us. But currently, there is no court order that grants our wives custody of our sons. There is also no court order that says that Alex and I can't have custody. Aha. Okay. Our attorney said that just taking our kids may force a quick custody hearing before a judge. But custody will probably not go to either husband's favor. There's an effing surprise. Even if we show that our wives are beating each other in front of our kids, mothers have to be incompetent or a direct danger to their children for a judge to take them away. What do you call that? Right? You all recall in the last episode. Our attorney's advice is that we should try to work out some sort of custody arrangement with our wives before doing anything drastic. But neither the husbands or the wives have official custody right now. What I got from talking to our lawyer is that a judge won't grant either husband primary custody, but there's no judge decision on the books right now. A judge is not going to take our kids from us because we grabbed them now. Regardless of what we do or don't do, the judge is eventually going to give primary custody to our wives. There's really no legal downside to just taking our sons right now. Okay. Alex's kid is almost a year old. He's an experienced father. He works with his father at his father's garage. He can take his son to work to care for him. He has in the past. Alex told me customers are very understanding when he tells them that he has to change a diaper before hearing about their car problems. Alex's father is also at the garage and is always willing to help with his grandson. Alex has childcare covered. Well, that's awesome. That kid is born to be a grease monkey. I am not an experienced father. When I confirmed my son is mine, I started to read up on how to care for an infant. Also, lots of watching YouTube about infant care. All that is helpful, but is not real life. I am learning to do by doing, but practically. I can't care for my there during the day. Him during the day. So I take my son away from Jill. So if I take my son away from Jill, I have the problem of caring for him while I'm at work. Alex told me Amy wants his son to live with him. The situation at my mother's house between Amy and Jane is crazy. Amy agreed that the situation at my mother's is bad, but of course blames me for the problems. Well, of course. If I just reconcile with Jill, Jane will go home to Guadalupe. Honest to God, they don't give up. You're not reconciling with Jill. Jill the terrible. Jane is still trying to isolate Jill from the people who really love her. Our mother won't throw Jane out because Jill will leave with Jane and take my son with them. If that happens, she believes Jill and her grandson will be lost to her forever. And to me, she won't tell Jane to go. So Amy's plan, since we can't live with Alex, is for her and her son to move in with me. Oh, Lord. Your a-hole sister. You picking the lesser of two evils here? Alex said he wants his son out of there. Living at my place was okay with him, but Amy would have to persuade me to take her and her son in. If not, Alex wants his boy with him. Before we could figure out what to do about our sons, there was more drama at my mother's. Shocker. I still talk to my mother and Amy. Even with all the BS about taking Jill back, they're the best source of what Jill's plans are. And I want to know what Jill's planning regarding my son. Amy came by my place last Saturday. Her daughter is due in June, and she's already pretty big. Anyway, she came by to try to convince me to let her and her son move in with me. She explained it's even worse at my mother's than before. Jenna's even more out of control, constant fighting. The cat house. Cat fights in the cat house. Notice your mom doesn't kick him out, but your mom's afraid she'll lose her grandchild. Amy told me Jill's friend Tony. Oh, now we have a Tony. Enter Tony in the story. Amy told me Jill's friend Tony called Jill earlier in the week wanting to catch up. He and Jill made plans to get together for dinner last Tuesday. Jane was, of course, invited to come for dinner with them. But if Jane went to dinner, they would need someone to babysit my son. My mother had parent-teacher conferences and so wasn't available to babysit. They asked Amy to babysit. Amy told them that she was told by Jane to butt out. Jane told her they didn't need any help from Amy, my mother, or any other outsiders. Amy refused to babysit for my boy. So Jane babysat while Jill went to dinner with Tony alone. Amy said Jane was freaking out all night. Jill didn't come home until 1 o'clock in the morning, and Jane and Jill had a huge fight when Jill finally got home. Another cat fight. Now you're going to learn more about this Tony character, and won't surprise you at all. Now Jill and Jane are barely talking. Jill went out to dinner with Tony again last night. Friday, Jane was not invited this time. Jill didn't get home until 2 a.m. Another huge argument that lasted over an hour. Amy said that she's loving it. Watching Jane freak out is better than anything on TV. Yeah. Hell, this story's better than most things on TV. I asked, "Who's Tony?" Amy looked at me with disbelief. Then she smiled, thinking I was kidding. I asked again, "Who's Tony?" Her face quickly changed to concern when she realized I really didn't know who Tony is. I'd be like, "Sis, who the fuck is Tony? Get to the goddamn point." I waited for an answer. Amy said Tony was Jill's college friend. They palled around in college together some, but Tony was just Jill's friend. Uh-huh. Yeah, we've heard all that he's just a friend song and dance many a times, gentlemen. Jill and Tony never had a romantic relationship. Sure. They were just buddies. Yeah, bed buddies. Jill's always been faithful to me. Then Amy's face brightened a little and she smiled. Amy said Tony helped keep guys away who wanted to hit on Jill. Yeah, because he was tapping something. Jill told Amy that people thought Jill and Tony were a couple, so guys backed off. It was good that Jill had a friend like Tony. It kept the predators away, because he was one. But it was never a romantic thing between them. Just good friends who hung out together in college. No guy hangs out with a pretty girl unless he wants to nail her. Or he's not hanging out with her unless he's nailing her. Girls will string along a guy just kind of like a show pony. Like, ooh, look at this guy who's hanging out with me and buying me drinks, but I won't sleep with him. Ha ha ha. But for a guy, he's thinking, I'll get my chance. I'll get my chance just one time, and I'll just keep buying her drinks and hanging out with her. Tony let me know he's just a friend. Amy asked me incredulously, how could I not know about Tony? Didn't Jill ever talk about him? Not to me. So Jill hung out with Tony, who was just a friend in college. He's using just a friend in air quotes here. Here's what I think about a man and woman being just friends. No such thing after puberty. Unless the male is gay, it's always a romantic relationship, emotional, physical, or both. These days, after Jill's adventures with Jane, I'm beginning to think this also applies to female and female friends. Here's why I don't believe women and men can be just friends. When I began high school, before Jill and I got together, I started seeing a gal who I met the first week of school. We got pretty close pretty quickly. She had a male friend who she told me had been just friends since elementary school. She said they'd never been romantically involved. He was just an old friend, her best friend. I knew who he was, but really didn't know much about him. He did not seem like the type of guy who would just be friends with a girl. But I tried to convince myself that he was just my girlfriend's male friend. No sex, so no big deal. I didn't want to appear jealous or controlling or insecure, so I didn't confront my girlfriend about her male friend. That's because you obviously didn't know what you were doing. You were young and inexperienced, and we all were. And you don't want to mess up what you thought was a good thing. Truth is, you didn't want to mess up getting any ass. My Uncle Jake, my father, and I tried to play golf on weekends when the weather was good. When we played golf, when I was in high school before Jill, Uncle Jake would ask about my love life. Was I getting any? If I had a problem, he would provide advice. But mostly he loved teasing me about my SCX life. Especially when I failed, as he put it, to get any. Anyway, I told him that I was seeing this great gal, but she had a male friend she was close to. Should I be concerned? Well, Uncle Jake probably wanted to throw a golf ball at you. My uncle told me you never date and certainly never marry girls who have male friends. They're never just friends. Men and women are not capable of being just friends. Is the guy gay? He asked. No. Then tell this girl to get rid of the guy or I should get rid of her. Unless I'm happy sharing, because there's no way I'm not sharing my girl with her friend. He's her real boyfriend. He'll still be there after I'm gone. Tough pill to swallow, guys. Tough pill to swallow when you think you got this amazing, wonderful unicorn of a girl and find out that she's, a demon from hell. My uncle insisted men and women can't be just close friends. Her friend wants to get in her pants. Regardless what the guy tells her or she tells you, he's after your girl. Correct. There's always a sexual or at the very least emotional component to every close male-female relationship. And the emotional relationship draws her closer to her friend and is on the way to becoming a sexual one. Just a friend is a lie women tell their boyfriends and husbands about their lovers. Exactly. Uncle Jake continued, all women know that there is no such thing as a male friend, just a friend relationship. A girl is a male friend because he makes her feel good. Attention and validation. Sooner or later, the guy will convince her that he can make her feel good, not just emotionally, but physically too. Well, she sees him as a total beta. She'll string him along, of course, and enjoy the attention and validation, yes. But certainly take advantage of him listening to all her bullshit problems. More attention and validation. Buying her shit, taking her out to eat and drinks and all that. She's getting something, some monetary thing out of that. And maybe when she's having a bad day or something, or breaks down, is drinking, maybe he might get some ass that one time, but usually the gals don't actually end up full-blown relationships with their so-called friends unless they see the guy as a catch, And that guy's probably nailing other girls at the time. But if he's just a guy who has no other girls and he's her beta friend, he might as well be her gay friend. But even then, sometimes you never know, right? She always likes it when he hugs her or puts his arm around her. It's just innocent flirting when the guy touches her in the places he shouldn't. She knows she shouldn't be letting a guy who's not her boyfriend or husband behave like that with her, but they're just goofing around. Maybe it's naughty, inappropriate, but it's all innocent. He's just a friend, but she's excited by his behavior, so she lets it happen. If it's the so-called friend that she has attraction for. Sometimes the gal even believes he'll continue to be just a friend. She tells herself that her relationship with him is an exception. He's not interested in her that way. If I had $1 for every time I heard a girl say something like that, girls I'm acquainted with or friends with or whatever, or I've known through various means, have that you joke about, oh, that guy's really hot for you. Oh no, not Jerry. No, not him. No, bullshit. Yes, Jerry. He wants to nail you. No. Bullshit. She says he'll never go that far. He's just the guy she can talk to. He really cares about her as a person. Yeah, he cares about your tits. That's what he cares about. Bouncing around your face so he can motorboat them. That's what he cares about. He makes her feel good about herself. It's all innocent. And she believes all his friendship BS until she finds herself sucking his dick. Shout out to Uncle Jake. The wisdom of Uncle Jake. We all need Uncle Jake in our lives when we're young. Uncle Jake concluded, try telling your girl or wife that some other girl is just a friend and see what happens. See if you survive it. Steer clear women who have male friends. You're always sharing her emotionally, physically, or both. My father was golfing with us and listened to our conversation. He didn't say anything, but he looked confused, then alarmed and angry. Well, as we all know, your dad should look alarmed, angry, and concerned. My mother knew lots of men who she described as just a friend over the years. But after a discussion on the golf course about my girlfriend and her male friend, I never heard my mom ever say again that any male was just a friend. No more male friends for my mom. Plenty of lovers over the years as it turned out, but she refrained from mentioning other men in front of my dad. She just denied that she had any male relations. I was 16 at the time and very naive. I believe men and women can be friends without it being a romantic relationship. Smack to your 16-year-old self. But I was a dumbass then too. But I learned never to dismiss what my uncle tells me out of hand. After school the following Monday, I asked my girl if she wanted to get something to eat. This was code we used when people were around. It meant, did she want to go to her house and hook up? Her parents never got home earlier than 6 p.m., so we had plenty of time. Well, at least you're banging this chick. She said she had a test the next day and needed to cram for it. She'll be studying all night. She smiled and said we could eat together after school tomorrow. She couldn't wait. No, honey, we can go back to your place for a quickie. I won't be long. Something about the way she told me she needed to study was off. I had my uncle's voice in my head. I rode a bus to and from school. She lived close enough to school to walk. She watched me get on my bus before she started walking towards home with a couple of girlfriends. I got off the bus while students were still boarding to follow her. After a few blocks, her girlfriends broke off for their homes. My girlfriend continued toward her house. I kept her out of sight, waiting on the porch, and at her was the guy who was just a friend. There's an effing surprise. She dropped her backpack, rushed into his arms, and gave him a passionate kiss. That sucks, bro. Sorry to hear that. First girlfriend, first crush, first love, first pride, first sex. Uncle Jake. We all need Uncle Jake. He put his arm around her, hand on her butt, and they went inside. Another kiss from just inside the front door. Something tells me they're not going to be studying chemistry together. Well, they're going to be making chemistry, not studying it. I blocked her on my phone and ignored her when she tried to talk to me. After a few days, she slipped a note into my school locker through the vents of the locker room, or the locker door. She told me she loved me and asked why I was angry at her. There were lots of spicy details in her note about what she wanted to do with me after school. I dropped her note on the floor in front of my locker for anyone to read. Until we graduated, I told any guy at schools she started seeing that he would share her and with her male buddy, and she claimed was just a friend. Up to him if he wants to share. That sucks. So anyhow, Jill hung out in college with Tony. Why didn't I know about Tony? And Jill knew the story about my high school girlfriend and the lover who was just a friend. There you go. That's why I never knew about Tony. Early in our relationship, Jill and I had to talk about my not being okay with her having male friends. So she knows how I feel about male-female friendships. She was with me, and she was not going to have any friendship with any guy. She said she was fine with that. Whenever a woman says fine to anything, gentlemen, is a giant red flag. It ain't fine. So when she got to college, instead of avoiding having any close male friends, she decided to go ahead regardless of my wishes. Just not mention Tony to me at all. She knew as soon as she told me about her male buddy, who was just a friend, I would know they were hooking up, so she didn't tell me about Tony. There you go. But you should have been doing some investigating anyway. But, again, you were young and didn't know. I'm sure Uncle Jake probably told you to do some investigating. I asked Amy if Tony just showed up now out of the blue. Amy was very wary now. She wanted me and Jill back together and Jane out of our lives. I would react badly to any suspicion that Jill was hooking up during her college years. Look how Alex reacted when he found out that Amy had cheated on him throughout college. Amy was afraid that any suspicion about Tony would be the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. Amy still didn't understand that coffin was already at the graveyard. Amy told me that Tony was a salesman for a pharmaceutical firm. Oh my God. This guy's probably making deals with doctors and Lord knows what. Total scumbag. His territory included where we lived. His job was to go to doctors' offices and persuade them to write scripts for drugs. What'd I just fucking tell you? Amy chuckled and said, if I'm ever sitting in a doctor's office waiting to see the doctor, the delay is probably because someone like Tony is telling the doctor all about all the wonderful Hawaiian vacation the doctor is entitled to if it just writes enough prescriptions for the drug or drugs the guy's pushing. So Amy continued, Tony comes through where we live every few weeks. He's been doing that since he got a job right after college. He must have found out that Jill's back in town, so he called her to catch up. Amy was surprised Jill never mentioned him to me. Well, now she ought to know. And I'm sure, and obviously Jill, Amy, your sister, knew all the time. Amy repeated that there was absolutely nothing romantic about Jill and Tony's relationship. Yeah, okay, honey. She was sure of that. If there was, Amy would certainly know. He was just Jill's college friend. Amy looked at me to see if I would believe any of this. I'd be like, hey, Sister Amy, get the fuck out of here. So Jill wasn't faithful to me in college either. I didn't care now, but I was not happy about this additional drama among the crazies and my mother's. Who knows what a jealous Jane is capable of? I don't care if Jill runs off with Jane or Tony, both of them, or the mailman. I just don't want Jill taking my son anywhere, and I don't want him in danger. Alex, I need to get our sons out of there. He says, sorry guys, you're not going to like the solution I came up with to care for my kid when I take him from Jill. The next Sunday, we had our weekly support session. I told my dad, my uncle, and Alex that I was going to take my kid away from Jill. But I can't care for him by myself. It will take me a while to find the right full-time nanny for him. I'll start looking for a nanny right away, but in the meantime, I'll tell Amy that she can live with me if she's willing to care for my son at the house. Smack! Are you out of your freaking mind? You're clearly picking the lesser of two evils here between your sister, your ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and your mother. And you got no other woman. Find another way, dude. Oh, my God. Alex's son can stay with me, too. The other three in my support group all thought I was crazy. Yeah, they're right, including me. I know you're in a tough situation, my friend, but time to put all your heads together. You're all smart guys. You can figure out another solution here. I told them, let's walk through it. Tell me the downside of taking my son and having Amy temporarily help care for him. Anything they can think of to prove it's a bad idea, here's what they came up with. First, Jill will call the cops as soon as she understands I've taken my son and not bringing him back. Do I have proof? I didn't just take the kid. At the hospital, you fill out forms to get the kid's birth certificate and social security number. I fill out the forms and use my address as the child's home. I got his birth certificate in the mail a few days ago. That should prove he's my son. Jill cannot show a court order that she has custody. Custody is still up in the air. If she calls the cops, they have no legitimate reason to take my son from me. He doesn't belong to her, but I agree there's no telling what the cops will do. Yeah, even though you have all that stuff. All it takes is a crying, screaming, panicking mother that does an Amber Alert or something, and next thing you know, if you figure it out. Second problem, how would I convince Amy to go along with me taking my son away from Jill? Amy and Jill are best buddies. Like sisters. Amy wouldn't do that to Jill. Yeah, well, guess what? I've seen sisters turn on each other in a heartbeat when their sisterhood no longer serves any purpose. I replied Amy is mad at Jill because Amy's jealous of Jill's relationship with Jane. Amy hates Jane and wants her gone. This is a way for Amy to get back at both of them. She can say she had nothing to do with me taking my son. She's just making sure that my son is well taken care of. Amy will love sticking it to Jane. All these outsiders taking care of my son. I tell him that I'm willing to bet Amy will be okay with me grabbing my son just to get back at Jill and especially Jane. This is a fucking soap opera. Third problem. My mom will convince Amy to return my child to Jill. I said that's possible. My mom is convinced Jill's planning to take her grandson away from her and go off with Jane. I'll talk to my mom and convince her that as long as my son's with me, Jill can't take him anywhere. She may lose Jill to Jane or Tony or whoever, but not my son. Short of me taking Jill back, my mom will see that me taking him will prevent her losing her grandson. Well, that's a powerful motivator for Mommy Dearest here. She will go along, and she can help Amy care for our two sons. My mother will see her grandsons as much as she wants, just in my place where they're safe. Also, I'm pretty sure that my mother will be glad to be rid of the two babies who are always crying. She'll be able to get some sleep. What other problems do they anticipate? Well, there could be a whole lot of things you haven't thought of yet. The judge may use it against me. Jill and Amy's attorney refused to talk about custody for either of our two sons. I told them if I wait for our lawyer to get a custody hearing before taking my son out of there, I'm stuck with whatever the judge says. If Jill wants a custody hearing, that is fine. If the judge tells me to give the kid back to Jill, I'll do that. But we should be able to get the judge to prevent Jill from wandering off with my son. We will also be able to tell the judge why I took him in the first place. The judge may not give a shit. The judge may see your crying wife and all the theatrics that she can put on. And who knows the judge's politics, preferences, all these things. It's a gamble. Jill threatening to take my son to the Caribbean to live with Jane. The physical fight between Amy and Jane. The escalating drama surrounding Just a Friend, Jane, and Just a Friend Tony. Maybe we'll find a judge who has enough brain power to see through all this and the awkward custody to me. Well, I hope you don't live in California or New York or any of these other places. But he won't unless I can show I can take care of my son. With Amy and my mother's help, I can prove I can until I can find a nanny. Dude, you should have found a nanny yesterday. That's all they had. My uncle and father said that sounds like the best a bunch of bad choices. Right, it's the best bad idea. Alex says it should work, but I should find a nanny as soon as I can. I tell him that's my plan. Any better ideas? No one had one. Again, the best of bad ideas. Find a fucking nanny. You should have found a nanny, again, a while ago. Get your Mary Poppins, and she can sing the spoonful of sugar for your baby, and off you go. And you can use some Disney magic to make this thing work out well for you. After the support session, I called Amy and asked if she wants to bring her son and live with me. She said more than ever. I bet she did. There's almost constant yelling and screaming at mothers now. Our mother tries to, but cannot seem to do anything about the fighting. She's still afraid if she tells Jane to get out, Jill will leave and take my son. An even worse situation, I told Amy to come by to talk. The 15-minute drive to my house took her less than 10 minutes. Which means she was hauling ass. I asked her what the latest is with Jill, Jane, and Tony. Amy said Jill went out with Tony for dinner on Friday. She did a lot more than having dinner with Tony. My mother would have watched my son so Jane could go with them, but Jane was not invited. Jill told Jane that she and Tony were catching up. Is that what she calls it? Jane would be bored. Well, of course, because Jane likes chicks. Jill told Jane not to worry about Tony. He's just a friend. Jill and Jane have been fighting since. At one point, Jane told Jill she was leaving and going back to Guadalupe. Jill told her if that's what Jane wants. Go ahead. Jill's staying here. Jane didn't go anywhere. Amy looked at me and said, Jill's staying here because she wants to be with me. She's here waiting for me. Jill loved me. Tony was just a friend. I told Amy that I didn't think my son was safe at my mother's anymore. Amy agreed things were nuts at my mom's. She wants out. But unless I take Jill back, Jane will continue to cause havoc. She is fucking relentless, your sister. Reconciling with Jill will solve all of these problems. I told Amy I had another short-term solution. Amy and her son can come move in and with me, but only if my son is also living with me. Is Amy willing to help care for my son? Amy said there's no way Jill will agree to let our son live with me. Our son is the only leverage she has on me. I told Amy I know that. I'm just going to take my son out of there. Is she okay with that? Amy was stunned. Her immediate reaction was to say Jill is her best and oldest friend. She can't do that to her. I'm not going to go through my whole talk with Amy, just some highlights. Over the next couple of hours, I convinced Amy that this was what was the best for Amy and her son and for my son. Maybe Jill will blame Jane for taking my son. Maybe Jill will tell Jane to leave. Regardless, we will end up fighting over custody in court. You can count on that, my friend. This will be a temporary solution until a judge decides about custody. In the meantime, Amy and her son and my son will be safely living with me and out of harm's way. Fingers crossed, amigo. I think the idea of Jill blaming Jane for her son being with me and Jill telling Jane to leave sold Amy on my idea. I agree with Amy's request that she tell Jill we'll return with my son and tell her as soon as Jamie's gone for good. Jane is gone for good, excuse me. So many fucking names here, it's confusing. Amy wants Jill back with me, but she's willing to settle now for just being rid of Jane. Well, if your sister Amy, to make this work, this best of bad idea situation work, if to get her along on board with this plan is to make her think that maybe you'll be getting back with Jill down the road, fine. I did not tell Amy that I was also concerned about Jill leaving with our son to go live with Tony. According to Amy, he lives in our state, but about 250 miles away. So I'm not giving my son back unless there's a court order to do so, or until I'm sure my son will remain in town here. Amy can tell Jill anything she wants. I'm not willing to give my son back to Jill if Jane is gone. I need to know Jill is not talking to him anymore. Well, we began discussing how to get my son. My mother watches my son in the evening 3 nights a week with Jill and Jane when Jill and Jane go to the gym. We can take him while they're out, but only if my mother is on board with my son living here. Both Amy and I thought we could convince my mother to let me take my son. Which of us should talk to her, Amy or me or both? Amy said she will talk to my mom. She'll tell me the same things about Amy I just discussed with her. She'll get my mother to agree. My mother understands the situation at her place is unsustainable. Amy said she'll convince our mother about me taking our son is a better solution than Jill leaving with my son to go somewhere with Jane. Well, there you go. You said that your mom's biggest fear is losing her taking the grandson up to Guadalupe or somewhere in the Caribbean. And that's the end of that. So that could be the leverage you get with your mom. But anyhow, this whole thing is nuts, but that's why I call the channel They Did What. But anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up part 7 here. Now we're looking at half an hour here, and I need a freaking break. So I'm going to continue on with part 8, or part 2 of this edition. Probably about an hour, hour and a half, so you all can take a break, have some dinner, and come back later and hear this part, whether you watch me on your phone, your laptop, or on your giant TV. And so when I'm watching TV and chilling tonight, you guys will be watching me on YouTube. How crazy. See you then.